Gurave Gaurachandraya Adikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha. So, pranam to all of you. Very happy, very inspired to be in your circle, in this circle with all of you, joining palms together for the success of yet another session of sacrifice, another yajna circle, praying that whatever we may be able to offer today is pleasurable to the center. And we can do that from a place of integration. We can do that from a place of integrity, from seeing each other without separateness and understanding the sameness, the tadatmya, so to say, of our attempts, right? So as you can see, still here in Switzerland, today is my last full day in this particular place. And tomorrow afternoon, we are going to Anandadham, this other place in Switzerland where I will be for a week or so, and we will be celebrating Sri Krishna Janmashtami this coming Monday. So in advance, best wishes for each of you in that celebration. So I don't want to overextend myself with any introduction, since I'm seeing a few nice number of raised hands. So we'll go there immediately and see what we can do, we can offer today. So Pranada, you're raising your hand first. You're first in the queue, so please invited to bless us with your inquiry. Yeah, nice to see you.
I'm editing a book for a devotee, and he's trying to make the point that one should be very cautious in one's devotional service because one can fall from the platform of Nishta and other platforms. And he quotes Lord Shiva speaking in the Sattvata Tantra that one can fall from all levels of bhakti, sadhana, bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti. And he, I saw the eyebrows, Maharaj.
Yeah, that's half of my reply.
And I would like to comment on this here. Then he gives the example of a fall from prema of Rupa Goswami in samadhi, meditating on the Leela. And there was something in the Leela where Radha and Krishna did something that was funny, and he laughed. And some sadhu was present who was lame, and the sadhu thought Rupa Goswami was laughing at him, and he left and took offense. So he gives this as an example of falling from prema by offense. And so I had a couple of thoughts, and I wanted to hear yours. One is, why are we hearing from Lord Shiva in the Sattvata Tantra? And I'm not sure what Shiva is talking about in terms of prema there, instead of the Goswamis. And then in terms of the example he gave of Rupa Goswami, well, I never heard that you can commit offense that you so unknowingly do. So if you could just give me some comments, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, this is my personal take, but I'm personally, of course, I don't know the book you're reading or editing now, so I don't know the whole context and the overall spirit of it. But I personally am not so much fond, at least in this chapter of my life, of emphasizing so much how you can fall at any stage, so to say. No? Because even if that's possible in one way or another, and we will go there, but I will be very careful in not overemphasizing this possibility of falling at any moment, at any stage, because that can give a really neurotic orientation to practice. No, like even, and my implication is, even if I can fall from Prem, I mean, try to imagine 99.9% of devotees who are not in Prem, when they hear that, it's like, okay, if you can fall from Prem, it's like I'm cooked up and down, and from both sides, it's over. I mean, there's no hope here, basically. No, for me, it conveys a notion of hopelessness. Like you can fall at any moment, at any stage. And again, I'm not criticizing the devotee. I don't know the general context of the work, but to overemphasize that, while at the same time we have to bring into the picture so many statements as we have shared already, that Krishna says in the Gita, I don't know, Neha Vikramanashasti Pratyavayana Vidyate Shalpamapyasya Dharmasya Triyate Mahatovayat. No, in this path, there's no loss and diminution. Even the smallest advancement will protect you from the greatest danger. Name Bhakta Pranashati, my devotee will never perish. And so many quotes. I won't torture you with those now, but speaking about how bhakti is so powerful, how Krishna is so merciful, how once you start the devotional journey, there is no coming back in one sense, even if there may be some fall. Again, the word fall is tricky because it may be something more, how to say, that we could normalize the application of the word. Like, okay, I fell, I made a mistake. What is falling? That's my point, right? Because sometimes we have charged the term generationally, generation after generation, and fall looks like game over, so to say. And in one sense, we could say, I mean, I'm already fallen. Like I remember once one devotee said that in Argentina. I appreciated that, because sometimes devotees are talking about falling, the possibility of falling, being Krishna conscious and falling sometimes. And he will say, I'm always falling, and sometimes I fall into Krishna conscious. No, like to bring the topic to normalize fallingness. Not to give permission to do nonsense, but just to embrace with humility and sincerity. I'm fallen. I don't need to pretend I'm not. And despite that, the irreversible grace of Sri Chaitanya Dev, Bhagavan, the Vaishnavas, is blessing my life, and I now have such a bright prospect. And that's the most important thing. And in my opinion, I think that's the thing we should emphasize the most. No, because there has been so much emphasis into the other side of the scale, so to say, that we need to balance the equation, in my opinion. So that will be a first point in regards to the wider discussion and topics on falling, potential falling. And of course, then comes what you mentioned from the Satpata Tantra. I never heard that before. I will personally, I cannot comment specifically on the section because, as you say, I like to see the whole thing there. No, and to begin with, the Sattva Tantra is not a book that is that important for us as Gaudiya Vaishnavas. I mean, although it's there somewhere, so to say, in the scriptural, how to say, in the scriptural cosmos, it's not absolutely not there, but it has no point of comparison in terms of how prominent it is for us in relation to texts like the Goswami's books and so on. And when we go to the Goswami's books, to the Bhagavatam, etc., we find no example of someone falling from Prem, because again, the idea of falling from Prem, as I imagine all of you may, how to say, foresee, hint at, it's complicated, because that from that idea, it's like, okay, everyone can fall from Golok. Of course, it's very user-friendly for that idea. You have Prem, you can fall from Prem. So that means Radharani can fall, Krishna can fall, Yashoda and Nanda can fall. All of them are Premikas. Of course, there may be some nuanced arguments there, and some say, well, no, they are Nitya-siddhas, eternal associate. They do not fall, but whomever is not the Nitya-siddha falls, or whomever fell once doesn't fall twice. We have all these varieties of of possibilities. But the conclusion is that you cannot fall from Prem. And it's, of course, for me, it's a basic thing in the sense of it has to, if you apply a basic logic, we should conclude that, because if you say, okay, you can fall from Prem, what makes you fall from Prem? What makes you fall? You name it. What? anger, envy, all that cannot enter Prem. All that is the gunas, if you want to describe it in that language. Rajas, tamas, sattva. There's no rajas, tamas, sattva in the land of Prem. That's described in the scripture repeatedly. From Vaikuntha upwards, there's no place for that. Maya Shakti doesn't operate there. So the moment we say you can fall from Prem, that opens the door to a whole set of complicated possibilities. Within potential, make Krishna a potential conditioned soul, if you will. And Prem subject to Maya Shakti. So in other words, again, we are saying the highest, most potent potency, Prem, divine love, who captures Krishna, who makes God a playful doll at the hands of his devotees, that most powerful thing now is covered by something else. So therefore, that something else must be more powerful. So what can be more powerful than Prem? Again, Prem is so powerful, it controls God. So what can be there more powerful than that? So we have to play out these basic implications when we hear things like that. And of course, you can tell me, no, but this is this pastime of Rupa Goswami. Even I will go to that pastime for a moment that you quoted. But even if that will be true, still you have all these other things that I just mentioned, which are just a few considerations that you need to bring to this scale. Because it's not, if not, still we are cherry picking. And that's what Rupa Goswami says we should do not when ascertaining the actual purpose of one particular statement in the scriptures. He says in the Lagu Bhagavatamrita, when trying to ascertain the meaning of any given scriptural section, we cannot cherry pick. We have to bring all the statements and reconcile them. Tatu samambayat. That's what Vedanta Sutra says, fourth aphorism. Tatu samambayat. And Srila Maharaj will say, scriptures are like a jungle of sounds. So you enter a jungle, it's easy to get lost in a jungle, to lose direction. No, in the jungle, everything is jungle. It doesn't. I'm not clear where to go. Sometimes in a scripture we may find passages which seem to indicate different things, but there's no contradiction if understood from the proper context. And for that, we may need to zoom out, see the bigger picture, see what was said before and after, to whom that particular statement was said, in which particular circumstance, what else was said in that context. I mean, that's an exhaustive discipline to understand scripture, hermeneutics, and theology. So that on one side, and in regards to this idea of Rupa Goswami witnessing internally some joyful lila of Radha and Krishna, laughing, and a handicapped person taking offense, and him losing sight of the lila, I've heard that story. And a few things I will say. First, to be honest, it's a story we've heard, but that's nowhere in any authorized scripture from the Goswamis or something to that effect, right? So we cannot establish the origin of that story. So I cannot tell you for sure that's true. And even if that will be true, which I wouldn't have a problem, that someone like Rupa Goswami loses sight of a lila, I wouldn't say that's because he fell from Prem. I mean, if you study, I don't know, Bilab Kusumanjali of Raghunath Das Goswami, after every 2 verses, he's losing sight of the darshan he's having. So you can say, oh, Raghunath Das Goswami, the Bilab Kusumanjali have whatever, 120 something verses. So every 2 verses, he loses darshan. So Raghunath Das Goswami fell from Prem like 65 times throughout the Bilab Kusumanjali. That doesn't sound too appealing to me, I will say. So again, and to lose sight of one particular darshan, that doesn't mean that you are falling from Prem. I will say that means you are advancing in Prem. Krishna is disappearing from your side, getting close to you, so close that you stop seeing him and you have to rediscover him and see him again. And the result of all that is your Prem has been upgraded. So that has nothing to do with falling from Prem. I know that sometimes this story of Rupa Goswami has been invoked to emphasize the dangers of Vaishnava aparadha. But to be honest with you, to be honest, if I have to be utterly honest, and some people here may label me as heretic from now on, I don't feel that that story is true. And if that's true, I don't feel that the way it's presented is healthy. Because again, it lands for neuroticism. Because Rupa Goswami is not aware of the handicapped person. He is absorbed in Lila. And because someone takes offense out of their misreading of the situation, he fell. I mean, that makes for full neurosis. No, you follow my point. Your heart is in the right place. You are sincere. You are doing your bhajan. You are Rupa Goswami. But someone else misreads your ecstasy and thinks you're bullying him. And you are thrown away from the realm of divine love because someone else misread it. That makes no sense. And to present that as an example and to put, like, how to say, to push that on the audience in terms of be careful of Vaishnava-aparadha, but that was not Vaishnava-aparadha. I mean, Rupa Goswami didn't commit offense. The handicapped person took offense. That's not the same. I mean, how many people took offense of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur or Prabhupada or any great soul? I mean, the greater the soul you are, the more people will take offense from you, probably. They will feel threatened. They will plan to kill you. And that doesn't mean because of all that, you are committing offense. Because Jesus Christ was crucified, he made so much aparadha. This type of logic is illogical. So I'm saying this because, again, sometimes we present the notion of aparadha with those examples and those emphases, and maybe nobody says anything, but what's happening inside of us, how we are processing that particular presentation, we may end up being quite neurotic. Again, because of I may do anything and everyone may take offense and misread my behavior, and I may be thrown, and I'm not even in Prem, so what will be my destiny? Again, going back to my initial point, trying to make full circle, I'm very hesitant about these presentations that emphasized falling, potential falling, and from aparadha, and with this type of examples, what's the end result? What's the fruit of that? Is that nourishing faith? Is that establishing us more in bhakti, or is creating unnecessary self-doubt, unworthiness, neurosis, feelings, fear, intimidation, anxiety, and seeing bhakti? Again, if we enter into that type of landscape or worldview, probably we'll lose sight that Krishna is an ocean of mercy. At least for me, and I'm of course writing about that now, and I have all the statements present in me now more than ever. So if I cannot, there's no point of comparison. When we emphasize so much, it becomes very much oriented on our own meritocracy, you know, how much I can do and how perfect I am, and I have not to fail in any single detail, even trying to be careful to behave in such a way that nobody takes offense and nobody misreads me. And we end up becoming a performer. We end up becoming a false character, forcibly trying to be perfect instead of resting in the idea and in the hope that Krishna loves us unconditionally already, and the bhakti is so merciful and powerful, and so on and so forth. For me, it's a very different, two worlds apart, no, in terms of how we can present bhakti and how we can orient our practice. So that's what I will say today. I don't know if that makes any sense, Pranada.
Yeah, thank you. That's good. It just points out the importance of your seva to the Vaishnava community, because here's a book that's going to go out to a lot of people, and it makes your heart so heavy, and like you said, it's illogical, doesn't even make sense. So I appreciate the seva that you're offering us.
Yeah, and of course, with all respect to whomever is the author of the book, I'm not distrusting his, her intentions, but yeah, I think, again, I don't know the wider context of the presentation, and I don't know the person, so I cannot reach further conclusions beyond what I said. But in general, that's what I will say. I don't know how much confidence and trust you have with that person as to share some of these ideas with him or her.
Yeah, I'm going to. I mean,
as part of your editing work.
Yeah, it'll be my comment.
in service of the presentation. Of course, I'm sure there are many important points that may be made in that particular book, but again, hopefully everything is in complement to each other and not one thing somehow counteracting or sabotaging other parts of the presentation. So, and of course, always willing to talk with whomever may need, even with that author, whomever he, she may be. But thank you. Beyond the case and beyond the book and beyond this particular example, what I say was as part of what I personally have witnessed for years in some parts, at least, of the Gaudiya Vaishnava community. Not everywhere, not always, but yeah, it's beyond the particular example as well. Thank you. Okay, we'll go next. Raised hand, who is Archan Siddhi from Alachua also. Please.
Hi.
Welcome.
It's nice to see Maharaj and all the
Pleasure.
other beautiful devotees on the call today.
Mhm.
My question, well, first of all, I want to say that I really, really appreciated your interview that you had with Rabbi and that you put up
Bradley
this past-
Artson. Yeah.
Yes, and he said a lot of really inspiring things. I love the GPS example, and that to me just filled
that
out
was
a concept
yeah.
that
That was my highlight also.
It was the highlight of that call. But I did have an issue with one thing that he said, and that's what I would like to have you comment or give your reflections on. And that was when he was speaking about the Holocaust theology, I guess, of how to understand why bad things happen to good people, basically. And he was saying how God can't be all powerful, all knowing, and all good at the same time for some to be able to understand the Holocaust. And of course, I have a lot of issues with that comment and then how he unpacked it. So,
Share a few of those.
well, yeah. Well, one thing is that if, he's saying that if God is all powerful, all good, and all knowing, he couldn't have, that means that if he knew that the Holocaust was going to happen and he's all good, then he can't be all powerful at the same time. That would mean that he's actually supporting evil, ultimately. And for me, it's like if you take, so he kind of gets God off the hook by saying that he's not all powerful. He's powerful, but he's not all powerful. And to me, that he said, so Jews were killed by some Germans and that had evil intentions, and so be it, kind of. And I was like, so to me, that makes evil men more powerful than God, evil men's intentions, that they could, and it makes, that to me makes the world feel really unsafe in terms of, our Sharanagati is, Krishna's our protector, he's our maintainer. And if you take God, you take that away from God, that he can protect us at all times, that makes for, to me, a very random and at the mercy of anybody's bad intentions in the world. Just, so I really, yeah, just take exception with that point. And and not looking at how I think, on his part, not looking at how things happen for us, but how they happen to us. It's a little bit on the victim mentality and not taking responsibility, because you see someone like Viktor Frankl, who was in the concentration camp, and how he thrived in that, and he had exceptional experiences with God because he was taking full shelter and trying to see that this is coming from God, and So that very different experience. So anyway, those are my reflections. And I'd like to hear yours. Sorry for going on so long.
No, please. I ask you to share your thoughts, so thank you. And of course, that's a very valid question. In fact, as I think you know, or I didn't tell you, but Anuradha also the other day sent me that exact same section of the podcast and wanted to know my thoughts. So yeah, it's a not only a touchy issue, but also a perspective which is not so much the one we hear in Gaudiya Vaishnava circles. So of course, it makes sense that those who listen to it may or took exception or be curious about or be a little bit like shocked by the new idea and trying to integrate or whatever. And of course, to begin with, before my official answer, every time I invite someone to my podcast, of course, I'm not expecting that we will agree on absolutely everything we are talking about. No, that for me will be a little bit not only unrealistic, but it will be like toxic. No, just like I will invite people that I'll agree on everything. To begin with, that doesn't exist. So, and even if that will be existing, if I'm just pursuing those that I will be agreeing up on everything, that's not, I will say, very rich in the conversation. Of course, it's not that in my podcast we are trying to find everything we disagree about and let's try to argue. But my point is, and I make that clear now, that yeah, I may be talking with people who may have their own perspectives, especially if they come from other traditions, other religions. And I'm, to begin with, I'm saying that as a general thing. I'm fine with having that interaction, even I may have some different of opinion, even with Gaudiya Vaishnavas that happen, of course. So I want to make that clear to begin with, no? Just for those who watch my podcast, not to expect that absolutely everything that the guest will say you will agree with, maybe even absolutely whatever I say people may not agree with. And I think again, there is place to normalize disagreement as long as it's in a respectful way and as long as we can like now unpack the conversation and continue to think together and also to appreciate in further detail, even if I disagree with you, if your point, so to say, that I disagree with is well thought and well presented, there's place for me to appreciate that. No? Of course, in the conversation I had going to the specific point, as you may recall, Arch and City, what the point you mentioned was brought almost at the very end of the podcast. And you can, maybe you recall, but even when I asked the rabbi about that, he said like, okay, I'll reply briefly. No, like he replied to that in maybe, I don't know, less than 5 minutes. But I've heard him in other conversations and I've read other things he wrote, and I mean, there's much more to say from him and from others who adopt that viewpoint. And that may help also to understand better what he meant in that particular point. That's what I want to make clear also, because it was, yeah, at the very end. And we were talking and I knew that he had to leave at certain time. So that's why also we didn't have neither of both time to unpack that, which I'm sorry to realize now that maybe I should have asked that question before. So there was time for that unpacking from his side to do justice to his own perspective. But anyhow, that's one point. So yeah, I asked him about this theme sometimes called Auschwitz theology or Holocaust theology, which basically has to do with theodicy, which basically means how to understand, how to prove or understand God's existence or God's all benevolence in the face of suffering, in the face of evil, in the face of pain, in the face of situations that do not seem to be that desirable, so to say, that healthy. And of course, as we may know, most people, I will say, I don't have the research here, but most people who consider themselves atheists, most of them will cling on this point, like, no, God cannot exist because of evil or suffering. And of course, believers and theists will bring their own arguments for that and so on and so forth. I'm just commenting on that. So regarding the stance he took when he mentioned God is not all-powerful or God is not omnipotent, he's not the only one saying that. There is a big current of thinkers, both in Judaism and in Christianity and in Hinduism in general, will say that God is not omnipotent, God is not all-powerful. But of course, very quickly, we need to qualify what we meant by that. And why I say that? Because I also subscribe to that in my own way. So what do I mean by that? Relax, Archana, for a moment.
No, yeah, no, I've heard you speak on it, and what you've said has been reasonable for sure.
Okay. Because I will say, to be honest, in many ways, of course, I don't want to talk for the rabbi now here. He's not here, but I will say that I think I align quite a lot with his thinking, as I mentioned when he was mentioning that. So what do I mean by the idea that God is not omnipotent? Because this is kind of the classical idea of God that is received in different traditions. God is omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, all benevolent, all the stuff. But I will say that when you start to play out the implications of that, you may need to nuance these definitions for them not to clash and create some conflict. For example, what do we mean by God being omnipotent? Now, if we understand God is omnipotent, means he can do absolutely everything he wants, because that's, strictly speaking, that's the meaning of omnipotent. Someone omnipotent means he has the potency to do to do everything, anything and everything. And the point is, if I start to ask you, okay, does Krishna have the capacity of stop existing? Can Krishna stop being God? Can Krishna create another person that becomes God also? Can we have a second? And I will say that most of us will say, no, that's not possible. Can Krishna fall in Maya, in material illusion? We'll say no. And there are so many things that we will say God cannot do. So strictly speaking, only because of those examples, and I'm just giving 2 or 3 now, there are endless, and I've been studying different works by theologians who give such a long list of things that God cannot do. Just the very first definition, we cannot say, strictly speaking, God is omnipotent, because he cannot do absolutely anything and everything. For example, can God cancel our existence, make us stop existing? Can God make us devoid of free will? Absolutely. We will say no. So can God stop loving? Again, we always say Krishna loves us unconditionally. Can God stop doing that? No. Can God stop being love? No. So there are so many quote unquote limitations, but any of these limitations are making Krishna less. On the other side, they are facilitating that he is all loving, all merciful. Of course, in comparison to us, we could say Krishna is omnipotent. In comparison to us, he can do so many things that we cannot do, but that doesn't mean he can do anything and everything, because again, that may create some problems by extension. So that to begin with, I'm trying to reply in certain layers because it's an important point and it may take time to process the idea. And again, as I say, interestingly enough, many of the things that God cannot do are possible for us. Krishna cannot fall in illusion. We can. Krishna cannot refrain from loving. We surely can. Krishna cannot change his sense of identity. We can. We are constantly changing our sense of identity. Of course, by saying this, I'm not saying we can outdo God in some areas. That doesn't mean that we are better than him, more powerful than him, but just it's showing that, how to say, both God and us have a distinct set of possibilities and limitations, which with him, of course, remaining more potent, almost omnipotent, let's put it that way, compared to us. Because again, if God will be entirely omnipotent in every sense of the term, he could exert power over us at any given moment, and that will cancel our free will. And that therefore will cancel the possibility of voluntary love. That I will say is the main logic in the people who oppose the idea of God being omnipotent. Because we say God is all loving. Okay, for God to be all loving means he has to give us free will, so we choose to love him. because love is a voluntary decision. But if God is all powerful that at any moment he can infringe upon our free will, canceling it, then how can he be loving? Because we won't be having free will for voluntarily decide to love him. So in that sense, his all omnipotence will get in the way of his all benevolence. That's one example, of course. So that's one point. Of course, I'm talking in general. I haven't gone yet to the point of the rabbi. I'm going there now. So in this light, in connection to the Holocaust, and of course, we are going to the Holocaust is a very delicate situation. In one sense, it's the most traumatic event in human history, if you want to put it in some way. The point of the rabbi, as I understood him, it was, okay, God is not omnipotent on the basis of what I just said. He can do many things, and following the example of the GPS he gave, he's trying to exert the most positive, persuasive influence in every possible person at every possible moment, trying to invoke the best possible situation as much as he can in his almost omnipotence without altogether canceling our free will. So that will be the point he makes. So in that connection, the Holocaust is not, in his view, something that God created, no, or something that God allowed, and something that God could have done something to prevent. To be honest, for me, I wouldn't feel very comfortable if I'm coming from the Holocaust and someone tells me, the Holocaust was Krishna's arrangement for you to learn a necessary lesson. That doesn't sound too healthy for me. That sounds like God is a little bit like sadistic. Like you need to learn some. Of course, Viktor Frankl learned the lesson he learned. I'm not saying that that's not possible, but I wouldn't put all that on God's shoulders, because again, if everything is absolutely orchestrated by the divine, so where is our situation? So I wouldn't say that by emphasizing human, I will say that Rabbi was trying to emphasize human responsibility, not get in the way of that by saying we have the capacity to create the Holocaust. We have the capacity, of course, to choose how to go through it and so on. And God is exerting his most positive possible influence. And those who trying to align with that spirit, they will discover that and they will be redeeming that. But it's not that God could just descend and stop the Holocaust with a thunderbolt or something. Because in one sense, again, the Holocaust was a result of human free will. And if God comes and cancels that altogether, he's canceling free will. And if free will is canceled, there's no possibility of love. Because love is a voluntary decision that requires free will. So again, I'm going back to that because we need to play those implications. So when we say in our tradition, and again, I'm not saying you have to agree with me. I'm not trying to convince you, Archon and Sidon, or trying to convince anyone. And some of these ideas may be new for some of you and may take time to process. And even after processing, you may disagree. And that's fine. We can continue loving each other despite disagreement. And I will say that when we say, okay, we have to trust that Krishna is maintaining us, you refer to that main aspect of Sharanagati, Goptritve Varanam. The central anga or the angi of Sharanagati, of surrender, is Krishna is maintaining you. Yes, but again, what does it mean? Of course, we can say Krishna maintaining you, and whatever happens in my life is Krishna maintaining me. So if there is a Holocaust, that's Krishna maintaining me. If I win the lottery, that's Krishna maintaining me. Whatever happens is Krishna maintaining me. That's one take. But I will personally say that the way that Krishna maintains us is ultimately by his unconditional love. No, Krishna is loving me unconditionally, and that's the ultimate maintenance, so to say. It's not just so much external providing of certain stuff or certain circumstances, but how he's loving me unconditionally. Of course, as much as I open myself to God and I invite him to, I don't want to use the word interrupt my free will, because Krishna doesn't want to interrupt our free will. I would say the more we open ourselves to God means the more we are aligning to his free will, the more he can take part in our life, because we're inviting him voluntarily to do so. But yeah, I wouldn't say that I don't see a conflict between the notion of, okay, Krishna is not omnipotent in every sense of the term. He has considerable potency, and in that consideration of the potency he has, he's trying to exert the most possible the most positive possible influence in my life and everyone's life at any given moment, considering what's best for each individual case. That's a given, and that shows his all benevolence. But again, if I bring the point of omnipotence, sometimes that clashes with that again, because omnipotence means he can do everything and anything at any given moment, and that may include the potential of interrupting our free will, canceling that. And that, for me, in my view, will be a way of not taking personal responsibility of certain things. Instead of saying, okay, the Holocaust, let's say, was human responsibility, was the creation of human beings because of whatever reasons, instead of saying, no, that was Krishna's arrangement. By saying that was Krishna's arrangement, it may be possible that we are disempowering ourselves for taking responsibility of what's our darkest potential as humans, what's all that we can end up doing, because that's our potential. No? We may not have been Adolf Hitler, but everyone has the potential to start a Holocaust. So I think it's, in one sense, more affirming of one's personal responsibility to acknowledge God is not omnipotent. He has big potency, but we have also a part to play. We have some influence. We have some creative potency. We have some responsibility, therefore. No, again, I'm not God. I'm not saying the same way, and I will say that is putting Krishna in a lesser position. I'm just saying it's an attempt to create proper responsibility and to explain certain situations, like Rabbi tried to do, like I've tried to do. And there's much more to say. Actually, I'm about to start, and I won't go there now, but the next chapter of what I'm writing now here in Switzerland, the next chapter I'm about to start, and probably that will be the longest chapter of the whole book, is exactly about this. No? Does suffering cancel God's being all merciful? Because again, I'm talking about Krishna being all merciful and all these beautiful statements and meditation, and that's true. But what to do in the face of evil or suffering? So that's a longer and longer conversation. I'm sure we will have many more sessions in that connection. But that's what I can say today, Archon Siddhi.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Take your
you.
time. We will. I'm sure this won't be the last time we will be talking about
I'm
this.
sure it won't be.
You are sure as well, and probably many
I'm
of you are
good.
sure as well. So that's fine. That's perfect. That's perfect. It's enriching each other with thinking together, and yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, there are a few more raised hands. So next one is Gayatri. Please, you can unmute yourself.
Good morning, Maharaj, and everyone on the call today. So good to see you. Maharaj, I'm working through your book, chapter by chapter, video by video as well too. I really appreciate, being able to hear and read your good work. It's so helpful for me. So just first a shout out and a thank you in that regard. Right now, I'm working through the chapter in Radical Personalism specific to individuation. And if you'll allow me just to read a quick sentence, I was hoping you could unpack an idea here for us today.
Yes.
Great, awesome. With a little bit of help from Jung, I believe, in this piece of the chapter, you define individuation as a process of deep transformation whereby both the personal and collective unconscious are brought into consciousness to be assimilated into the whole personality. So beautiful definition of the same. I know, or the piece I'd love for you to unpack a bit is how the collective unconscious is a part of this process of transformation for individuation. It seems a little counterintuitive, though I know that that's been a part of my process and healing my experience over the last decade or so. So would just love to hear from you a little bit about what the purpose of that piece is in our process of becoming, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So what comes to me at this precise moment is how to, of course, how to make sense of how to connect this idea of integrating the collective unconscious into our process of individuation, which seems, as you say, very much about the individual, about me as an individual, integrating, developing, and becoming all that I can be. Let's put it that way. So what does it have to do with the collective unconscious? What's going on? Collective implies other people, well, probably me included in that collective, but everyone else, so to say. So what's the part of the collective in the individual? Let's put it that way. Or what's the part of, again, integrating the collective unconscious into one's individuation? And for me, the simple answer, if I dare to be simplistic, I don't want to be simplistic, but I hope I'm not, is that we do not exist separately. So, yeah, that would be my immediate answer. Like, we are not a separate entity. We do not exist in isolation from everything else. So immediately, if I talk about individuation, I have to talk about the collective, what's going on beyond me, because I'm not absolutely unplugged from that. Reality is interconnected. Nothing exists unplugged from each other. And I know that when I'm saying this, for many of us may sound like complex or abstract or difficult to understand, because, again, because of where we may be, and I include myself in that, still we see so much separateness, because that's the root anartha. That's the root problem, that we see each other separate from each other. We see everything separated from everything else. Well, actually, everything is integrated. Everything is part of one same, non-dual, indivisible, unbroken reality. That's what we mean with reality is non-dual. It's, in the words of Ilia Delio, she will say, reality is unbroken wholeness. No? So reality is whole, no? And it's unbroken. It's indivisible. It's a whole. That we don't see that we see fragmented parts, so to say. That's our own fractured consciousness filtering reality through separateness. And that's the whole problem, like the Bhagavatam say, bhayam dvitiya abhiniveshatasya. When we see reality through duality in parts, like one binary, one thing here, one thing there, one thing, we are creating all these divisions. And of course, the inner divisions we have in our own heart, so to say, are expressing all the inner external divisions within the world in terms of wars and conflict and so many things that come from this initial sense of I'm separate. No? Not everything belongs, but there are some things that belong, some things that don't belong. Last night I was watching a documentary that Yugal Kishore suggested that is describing, and I won't enter into the details, but the whole Israeli occupation in Palestine, and anyhow, complex social dynamics with lots of this sense of you don't belong, only I belong. You have to be, here's the wall, you live on the other side, we live on this side. We are strangers to each other. No? There's no common bond that we share. That's the symptom of what we call illusion, separateness. So for me, this idea of integrating the collective unconscious means, first of all, understanding that we are not separate from each other, and on that foundation, trying to connect in one way or another through different practices, discipline, therapy, whatever, depending on each case, through what's the pulse of the collective unconscious. Now, what's going on in the collective beyond myself? What's being carried by our ancestors, so to say? What's happening beyond me? Again, like entering to that space when we try to live and experience reality beyond my unique personal perspective. And I know it's not easy, because generally we tend to do that. But actually, when we become separatistic and try to see reality only from my perspective, that's not me. because I'm not a separated being. So when I see reality from my own perspective, with my own ulterior motives, separate agenda, selfish desires, that's not me. That's the anti-me. So who I am is an integrated being. Of course I'm an individual soul, but as an individual soul, I do not exist in isolation. That's the whole purpose of Sambandha, right? The word Sambandha means Sambandha. Everything bandha, bonded together. The other day we celebrated Raksha Bandhana on Balade Purnima, right? Bandhana. Again, you are tying something on the wrist. Raksha Bandhana, this famous. So everything is tied together. Everything is bonded together. Sambandha. That's the AVC education we have to receive in devotional life. Sambandha Gyan. First thing, nothing exists separate. Everything is bonded together. So therefore, you are part of a collective. You do not exist separate from reality. Is relational. Let's use that term, relational. God is relational. Reality is relational. We are relational. Everything is in relationship with everything else. That we don't feel that, that's another conversation. That's our problem. But that doesn't mean it's not like that. That we see people as strangers, that means we are estranged from reality. No, you have this expression in English, to be becoming estranged. When you become estranged, maybe I'm pronouncing it wrongly, you see everyone as a stranger, naturally. So yeah, the other day I was hearing that in some circles of Buddhist communities, they have this interesting idea. Of course, I don't know how much they use it as a prompt, or they actually think that's the case. But in order to foster proper, sense of connectivity and relationality, their outlook is, every single person that exists in my previous life was my mother, or my father, was my parent. Every single person was my parent in a previous life. Like implying, when you relate to anyone, try to bear that in mind, and for sure you will relate to that person with some sense of bondness, of connectivity. So again, it's a way of putting it, but trying to bring this point to the table. Like, if I feel that every other person is a stranger, that doesn't mean the person is a stranger. That just means I'm estranged from reality. So again, the process of individuation is not just like an overdose of self-indulgence, so to say, and it's all about me and me and me and me. The more I repeat me and me, the more I say me, the less I am who I am. No, so I can use the word me, but it's in the context of we. No, I exist in community. I mean, the whole of reality is a community. We are in community. Everything is connected. Community, common unity. We share a common unity. We share a common bond. There is a common center, as simple as that is on morphological terms, the analysis of each word. There is a common center, therefore everything is connected to that. There is a common unity, therefore reality in itself is a community with interrelated parts, and we are one of those. So whenever we talk about ourselves, we are at the same time talking about our connection and relationship with everything. And we should live and behave as such. And we are trying to develop ourselves and integrate our different layers of personality and whatever it may be. That's also in touch with the environment, and also acknowledging I'm a byproduct of the environment. There are so many influences around me that play a role, and trying to connect with the pulse of the collective that many times is influencing us unconsciously in more ways than we can ever conceive. So that's also part, bringing the unconscious to the conscious, of course, no? And many times when we speak about the collective unconscious and integrating that, also means integrating something means bringing it from the unconscious corner to the conscious platform. And that applies to our individual unconscious. Now, so many things are in our unconscious, and the idea is to bring that those unconscious layers to our consciousness and deal with them accordingly. So it's a process. It may take time. We need to be tuned in. But I like to emphasize this foundational point that I think is so important, which is, again, for me, the collective is not counterintuitive because we do not exist apart from a collective. We are in community. Of course, one of the big problems in our society is people feel lonely, people feel isolated, people feel estranged, which again, it all shows how distracted we are from the very makeup of reality. Because everything in reality already is connected. Everything is already community. Everything already belongs. So whenever we feel estranged or separated from that, that's not to blame reality itself, but that's just a symptom for us to invoke proper sambandha gyan, so to say, proper knowledge of how everything is bonded together, and try to inhabit that place more and more, try to live more and more. And of course, for that, we need relationships that show us that these things are true. Of course, no, we need direct experience. It's not just about convincing myself in theory, but we need a powerful experiential moments with other people that confirm, okay, we are community, we are one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. There's only one family. And so many ways to say the same thing. So, but yeah, I appreciate your question, Gayatri. I hope that helps. I don't know if it made sense. Any further comments you have?
Absolutely perfect. Doesn't need to be any more complex than that. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the question. So next raised hand is Rosangis. Back from New Jersey.
Yes, Maharaj, I'm back. And I just have to say that I was with my mother, elderly mother, 99, brother-in-law, sister, and they're Jewish, and pretty religious.
Yeah,
I've
I
never
remember.
been, but you know what? Like being around you and what you're teaching and the way you're kind of bringing openness and extending interest into other traditions.
We are doing all this together. I'm not doing anything by myself.
Well, I'm following good, well, let's say, and I got to ask questions of them that I've never asked before. Hello, you know, I've raised in that family. I've never been curious aloud with them. Well, how do you believe God communicates with you in Judaism? And do you believe, what do you think happens after life, after death? And we had the most wonderful conversations. They loved it.
You started your own podcast now.
They loved it so much.
Yeah.
And I felt like more mature and less fanatical, like rigid. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
What a blessing and a perk. And my question is, in relationship to Bhakti Ross's podcast as well from the other week. And I think she's here. Ask her permission, but I know
she's not here.
Oh, but it's nothing that's new, I think, for you.
Okay.
And so I'm going to, and by the way, one thing she said in relationship to the bad things that happen, she doesn't believe Krishna is doing them, but his part is that he stays with us through it all. He's there with us for shelter and comfort and guidance through everything. That's very lovely to think of, that, right? That is there as a constant.
Yeah.
As a constant, right?
Yeah.
So the point, at about 30 minutes in her talk, she started to talk about going out on the ledge, like being vulnerable, you know, and going out on the ledge and actually jumping. And unless we're willing to do that, we won't feel held or caught by Krishna. We won't feel embraced. We won't experience that. That we have to take those risks in order to feel that embrace and that confidence. And that is with others as well. You know what I mean? With each other in community as well. So I was just wondering if you would expand on a little bit. What does that mean exactly? You know, that we take some risks to speak our mind and our truth and be ourselves, right? And that can be scary because we're used to being judged and criticized.
Yeah.
Oh, and she also used the word, unless we're willing to be humiliated, unless we're really being willing to really take those risks, we're not going to experience the beauty
Okay,
and
okay.
the
Yeah, I'll say a few things. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Regarding humiliated, I don't know what I said, but just we have to be careful with how we use that word. But not that we are trying promoting be humiliated by other people or something, but just sometimes just we embarrass ourselves by how we react to some situations, not to feel bad about ourselves, but just to be sobered what may need to be matured and growth. In that sense, we may use the word humiliation. Like, for example, I know that Richard Rohr said, at least at some time in his life, he will pray for one humiliation per day. And again, this is not any dysfunctional, masochistic type of proposal, but just I want a certain situation that comes to my life to humble myself. Again, in that spirit, just to clarify that. In connection to what you asked about Bhakti Rasa's class, I haven't had time to go through it yet, and she's not connected here, so I may say something, but you have to ask her mostly, right? Because I haven't heard the class, I haven't seen the context of what she said before and after, but of course, it makes sense what you shared so far about the importance of, if I understood correctly, if you want to feel Krishna's embrace, sometimes you have to jump off the cliff, so to say, and allow yourself to be received. Because we may know in theory that Krishna is receiving us, but sometimes we need to, if you want to call it that way, take certain risks or go a little bit outside of our comfort zone to experience how we are still being held. Because it's in one sense we can say I can be in my comfort zone and say eating Swiss chocolate here in the Alps and say Krishna is loving me unconditionally, and yeah, it's okay. I mean, but sometimes in order to feel that more profoundly, I may need to go a little bit outside of such comfort, so to say, to see how he still is holding me, even when everything else happens not to hold me. That's my point. Sometimes we externally try to create circumstances that hold us at every step, which we call comfort zone. And that may be because we fear that without those external holdings, nobody will hold us, nobody will receive us. So we try to secure, so to say, I'm not saying everyone, but that can happen. We can try to secure externally everything out of fear because we are afraid that if that's not there, who will be there for me? So that's what I say sometimes. Even when we make all those arrangements, reality will happen in certain way to create circumstances to crack, so to say, some of those comfort zones for us to be willing to step into the unknown, if you want to call it that way, and to see, as you are showing, uncomfort zone, to see how still you are being held. Of course, you have to be willing to that, as we were talking before with Arch and Sid, like the situation in the Holocaust and Viktor Frankl. That was probably the most uncomfortable chapter of any single person, but he was willing, he was open, and he could find, even in the midst of that horror, God's shelter was there, God's unconditional love was there. And again, by this, I'm not saying that his unconditional love created the Holocaust, but I will say, despite the creation of the Holocaust by humans' free will, God's unconditional love not only is there, but it's more powerful than the Holocaust, if you are open to connect with that. At the end of the day, we could summarize that the whole human suffering, the purpose of that, if you want to put it that way, is to show that love is always more powerful than pain and suffering and anything else. And of course, for that, we have to be willing to open and to connect to that. And that has a lot to do with vulnerability and jumping off the cliff and trusting and surrender and all these words we love to use, but sometimes we fear to embrace, literally. So basically that, that accepting, again, as we were talking before, Gop 328 Varanam, accepting that Krishna is my maintainer that's not so easy as it sounds. Accepting is not just a belief. No, I mean, we don't care. I don't care for beliefs. I don't care for what you believe or you don't believe. We don't. Sometimes religion became very expert in giving people beliefs, what to believe, what don't to believe, but they are not giving them experiential moments, so to say. And we need to have experience. If we don't have any experience, we may believe all the right things and we are miserable. So we need experience. And again, part of this experience imply living the familiar, imply this hero's journey dynamic, imply quote unquote risking. But as Srila Siddhar Maharaj will say, in the beginning, we will feel too much risk, little gain, and we will be petrified and don't take too much steps. When we progress a little bit more, we will realize the more risk, the more gain. At the end of the day, he says, we will realize there was no risk. It was all gain. So in one sense, the risk is my own perception of what I think I may lose if I do this or that. But when you are fully awakened, you realize there's nothing to lose. There's all to gain. All blessings are conspiring, so to say, in my favor. So I don't, there's no risk, literally, although we may feel it as such in certain stage. And especially if we feel that doing certain things are risky, that's showing that I need to take that risk to realize that that was not a risk ultimately. Of course, I'm saying that in general. I'm not saying with this you push yourself extremely or push other people, take risks, go out of the comfort zone, and it may be too much. No, but at the same time, that's necessary. A balance of comfort zone and I'm outside of the comfort zone, a balance of chaos and order, a balance of what's predictable, what's unpredictable. Again, proper balance. I'm not just promoting one extreme or the other. So those are a few thoughts that come now, Rasangi, but the rest, please, you solve that personally with Bhaktirasa, because I'm sure she will have way more to say than I.
No, I love that. And one of the things she said is that there's no becoming in the status quo. No becoming. So we want, maintaining the status quo. We're just kind of, we want to be in that ever evolving state, right?
Yeah, and eventually, those are the dynamics of progress, right? In the beginning, we will do something to, to go against the status quo, but after some time, that very thing becomes a status quo. So we need to break that mold and go beyond that, and again and again and again, and so on. So which was a rebellious act to defy the status quo eventually becomes the status quo naturally. It's nothing to criticize about that. It's just the nature of things, attaining certain stasis, and eventually we have to break that mold and attain a new challenge to the status quo, and that's how progress takes place. That's how Srila Maharaj defines it. Yeah. Thank you, Rasangi.
Die to live or die to love. Thank you, Maharaj.
Right, thank you. Okay, I'm seeing 3 more hands. I'm not sure if we will have time for all, but and on top of that, I'm reminding Namrasa sent me a question. So let's see if we can get to all of that, or if not, we will pass some for the next week or something. But Yudhishthir Prabhu, you're raising your hand, please. Thank you for coming. Nice to see you.
Okay, Hare Krishna, everybody. I'll ask the question afterwards, but I just want to say that regarding omnipotence, Krishna created this entire situation. So you know this, Maharaj, and I think everyone does, but Lord Chaitanya put everything to rest by, the axiom of Chinta Veda Aveda Tattva. So therefore, Krishna created all of this. And I think for those maybe having trouble with some of the statements or thoughts about the lack of omnipotence of God, is that he is simultaneously omnipotent because he created the circumstance in which all of this happens. Does that make sense?
I'm not so sure.
Pardon me?
I'm not so sure if I understood the whole of the idea. What do you mean that
Well,
Krishna created all of the circumstance?
So let's say that someone writes a play and they are the author of the script and they direct the play, they recruit the actors, so they create that opportunity for the actors and everything. And part of the play shows, people are acting through helplessness and suffering and all of that. It's part of the play, but it was originally written by one person who created all of it. That would be my analogy for.
I see.
So
Yeah, I have,
at least for me, it makes it more digestible.
okay.
That's all. Just share.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I want to say that we each have our triggers and words that create this sometimes visceral reaction. So I want to make myself vulnerable and share mine and see what you have to say about it. It's the word, how we use the word devotee.
Okay.
I've always felt that, growing up as an adult in ISKCON, I thought very innocently, because it wasn't explained to me otherwise, that only members of ISKCON were devotees. So one of the articles I have on my list to work on is the difference between a devotee and a member. Because obviously a devotee is extremely broad. Intrinsically, every living entity is devoted. But I have a problem when people use the word devotee, because it implies that everyone else is a non-devotee. And when we're working towards seeing with equal vision.
And we use that expression a lot, non-devotee.
Also, what to speak of all the others which are more horrible. So maybe you can comment on it, because the use of the word devotee, it's used so it undermines the potential of other souls to become devoted.
Yeah.
When we imply that we in this, club are so special. And it also undermines our ability to grow and appreciate and have gratitude and become more and more humble, all of these things. So maybe you can add a little bit to that. But
yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to talk about that. I'll go straight to that particular question.
yes,
Although I appreciate your initial comments on the other topic, but I won't go there because that's a whole different conversation. And
it is
I
one
want
day.
I want to concentrate here now, and we can continue talking, of course, on other moments. Of course, I totally agree with what you mentioned about using term devotees in a way that it's all encompassing. In fact, these days I was writing on the book I'm writing, and for example, we have names of Krishna like he's Bhaktavatsala, like he's the affectionate to his devotees, which many times we made the point, okay, he's affectionate to his devotees. So to those who are not his devotees, he's not as affectionate, and this type of things. So which seems to imply Krishna doesn't love everyone, but only his devotees. And what to speak, as you mentioned, when one has a definition, restricts the definition of devotee to one particular institutional affiliation, no, which makes it even more like suffocating. No, some people may think even devotees are only the ones in my temple or in my community or disciples of my guru, which again, all of these are varieties of short-sightedness, I will say, out of a kindergarten faith. I'm not condemning that. There's a place for that at one stage, but we should grow out of that. Not only, as you say, to the point of saying, okay, there are other devotees in other Vaishnava institutions, Gaudiya institutions. Okay, the other Vaishnava Sampradayas are also devotees. Okay, other people from other religions are also devotees. We have to reach the point, as you mentioned, everyone is a devotee. And of course, as we were talking, some people do not behave as a devotee. Some people even do not have bhakti, which is another conversation. But in potential, as you mentioned, in potential, everyone is a devotee. No? And I will say that Krishna in his unconditional love, he's seeing us ultimately in our potential. He's seeing us for all that we can be. He's seeing us in terms of our brightest future. He's not seeing us according to what we did in the past. He's not seeing us according to the mess we are still in the present, so to say. But he's seeing us exclusively from the perspective of all that we can be. And in terms of that brightest perspective, all that we can be is a devotee, a lover of God. So that's the way he's seeing us in the most generous, merciful way. And that's how, if God is seeing everyone from that eye, that's how we should see everyone. Because the Bhagavatam says in one part, one should learn to see everything in reality in the same way God is seeing it. And on another interesting quote, I was reading today's 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, and I found this beautiful verse, verse number 6, chapter 15, verse 7, canto 7, and says, one should offer prasad to the demigods, the saintly persons, one's forefathers, the people in general, one's family members, one's relatives, and one's friends, seeing them all as devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So again, for me, that's the last word. That's the Bhagavata, which is saying, again, 7, 15, 6, for those who do not believe me. And there to say, you should see everyone, and it says saintly people, it says relative friends, and they say people in general. So basically means anyone and everyone. You should see all of them as devotees of God. No, and of course, again, the question is, but that guy is a serial killer. How can I see him as a devotee of God? Again, in potential. We cannot cancel potential. Although at the present moment, that person may be a public danger, and we may need to take practical measures to maybe even incarcerate that person. In potential, that person its brightest future is a beautiful lover of God. So I know it's not so easy to apply in practice, but that's the generosity we should embrace, because we are being seen in that way from above. So of course, if we feel hope and nourished by being seen in that way, we have to extend that vision to everyone else. We have to see everyone else in those same terms. So yeah, I totally agree with that idea when we use the word devotee. And as you mentioned, maybe sometimes it has so much generational trauma attached or prejudice intertwined with that word that we may need to stop using the word altogether, or to qualify the word, or to make some disclaimer before using it, or making some clarification to use the word in such a way that it remains clear that we are not pointing to any particular tribe, so to say. It's not tribalism. I totally agree with you. When we speak about, we could say Gaudiya Vaishnava. If I want to refer to someone from my tradition, I can say Gaudiya Vaishnava. I don't need to say a devotee, because I mean, I wouldn't say that Saint Francis was not a devotee, no, or so many examples in any tradition. So yeah, words are very delicate, because they can convey, especially when they have some generational like content attached to it after layers and layers of being used in certain way. Sometimes we need to, again, stop using it altogether, use another word, or clarify our usage of that word. But yeah, ultimately,
Yeah, and maybe using the word member,
yeah,
is much more clear, because obvious reasons. I want to thank you also for your comments on Sambandha.
Okay.
It really helped. Putting it in that context. And as you were speaking, I was just thinking, there medical doctors treat the body, behavioral therapists treat the mind and emotions and coping. And after, I mean, I don't know if everyone is like me, that there's some trauma, I think, for most who connect with any serious path with stringent guidelines. But this is like spiritual therapy. So I just wanted to thank you so much.
It's
being an instrument. I know, I appreciate you're an instrument.
No, and I'm in therapy.
Allowing us to share. Yeah.
And I'm in therapy with all of you. So We all need some form of therapy, some form of healing, and thank you for your words, and yeah, I more and more identify with words like healing and words like wholeness, and I don't think by doing that I'm diluting or we are boiling down the essence and the context of our tradition, but we are adding nuance and layer to that, and for me, I'm more and more inclined to like interpret, so to say, spirituality not so much as some ascent to perfection, but like a journey of ongoing wholeness. So that's the orientation I find more healthy and more sustainable and more therapeutic at this precise chapter, at least for me. So yeah, happy that we may be able to nourish each other in the therapeutic circle today here. Thank you, Judith Bro.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have one more hand raised. So Alexander, you can unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna Maharaj,
Nice
Dhanavad
to
to
meet
you, and it's wonderful Sangha. Very grateful to be here. I will also echo what the Yudhishthira Prabhu said, that just finding out about you and your journey and all your classes and viewpoints it's been extremely therapeutic for me as well in my own spiritual journey at the stage I've been at. So thank you for that. And so my question has to do with the concept of aparadha. So we hear that there's like 10 offenses to the holy name, right, that can slow our progress down. And one of them is to, even though we've heard about the glories of the holy name, to still have some doubt or to not be convinced, or basically, yeah, to not believe fully in the Shakti, the power of the holy name. So I'm curious, like, if that is one of the offenses, but before we become actually convinced fully, we need to have an experience of it. But so it seems like it creates this kind of catch-22. So I wonder if you could speak more to that and kind of like the nature of aparadha. It's like, because I can't see that God would become offended. So it seems that it's more of a on our part. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, and of course you have shared that question to me some days or weeks ago, and I invited you to do it publicly so we can share with others. And also I've been thinking about that not only after your question but before that, about the notion of aparadha and how we touch upon that in the beginning of our meeting today also, aparadha, and how we sometimes present the things in a way that seems that whatever, or God becomes easily offended, or it's very easy for us to make offense and fall and be like, how to say, exported from heaven, so to say, ostracized, and it may create a very fearful, intimidated orientation to bhakti that almost counteracts hope and faith and makes it all more possible to fail miserably than to be successful. So yeah, we have been very expert in promoting things in that way without any bad intention, each one carrying its own unresolved stuff into the process. And I think there's lots of need to redeem that. And for me, the very notion of aparadha, I've been thinking these days, in these long walks in the Swiss Alps, and for me, and sometimes we have been made some difference between sin, papa, and aparadha, sin and offense. But at the same time, I'm finding that there is some combination. It's not so easy to draw a line between the separate of one thing or another. And of course, when I'm saying this, I'm meaning that when we speak about sin doesn't mean that you are an evil person, ontologically bad intention, and all that stuff that sometimes, again, triggers shame and guilt and neurosis, and I'm so bad, and over-identification with unresolved stuff. Sin, as the original term comes in Latin, hamartia, is an archery term that means you are missing the mark. No? And today also I was reading the Bhagavatam, and there was one verse that says that the jiva is like an arrow, no, and Krishna is like the aim. No, so again, similar symbology also in the Bhagavatam. So sometimes we miss the mark. We are the arrow. We try to go to the center. We end up somewhere else. No big deal. Shoot again. Try again. It's not that you are damned forever, no coming back. But sometimes we may use the word sin in that way. At least in Christianity, they have done that a lot. Probably in our tradition, we have done that a lot with aparadha. No, that's our term to traumatize us a little bit more. And of course, we weaponize the term to create so much paralysis and no more critical thinking, because nobody wants to be an aparadhi, right? Nobody wants to be labeled forever, branded as an aparadhi. So that's not healthy. An aparadha basically means aparadha, to go against love. That's basically aparadha. I mean, I don't want to be reductionistic, but apa means against, like apa siddhanta, apa sampradaya, aparadha. And radha or aradhana means loving worship, loving service. So aparadha means things that we do that go against the spirit of love. Of course, I'm not trying to normalize that. So relax, it's not that big issue. Of course, if we are treading the path of love, we want to avoid the things that go against love. Now, that said, sometimes we may do things that are a little bit unloving, let's put it that way. But it doesn't mean that, again, we are damned forever, branded. There's no return from that. It's part of the deal. Just to normalize a little bit that. And when I'm saying the two of them kind of mix, sin and offense, an offense is not the proper word to use, because, again, offense is generally related to someone else taking offense. And as you mentioned, it's not so much that Krishna feels offended. Oh, like, you did that, I'm angry with you, I will disappear. No, that doesn't speak well about the God of unconditional love. So it's more about us doing something that is harmful, and ultimately the harm goes to us. No, I mean, we are chastising ourselves by doing bad stuff, so to say. But again, there is some mixture. For example, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he speaks about aparadha in his Bhajan Rahasya and other books, he gives a fourfold division of anarthas, and one of the division is aparadha, and that each one of them are divided in four apart. So aparadha, one of the four divisions of aparadha is jiva aparadha, which, because then you have, first you have Nama-aparadha, Vaishnava aparadha. So you could say, okay, aparadha is related to offending bhakti, offending what's related to bhakti. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur somehow extends the idea to say jiva aparadha, offending any jiva, which may not be a bhakta. Again, according to what we just said, we could say, well, but everyone is a bhakta in potential. So again, then if I mistreat someone who is not a devotee, you could say that's technically speaking papa or sin, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur is speaking about that as jiva aparadha. So again, where to draw the line? So I'm more and more tending to not to make the two one single thing, but also not to make them two entirely separate departments. So that was an introduction going to your specific question regarding the Nama-aparadha, or the 10 things that go, let's say, against the loving chanting of the name. First thing that comes to mind is Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Harinam Chintamani. He describes something called Shraddha Nama Vas. Now he speaks about other forms of Nama Vas, or the shadow of the name, as we know, like chanting jokingly, etc. I won't go there. But then he includes this fifth one, which means basically chanting, maybe committing still some aparadha, but not wanting to commit aparadha, without intention of committing aparadha. So there comes the point. No? The thing is that then what's aparadha? Aparadha is that you are doing something with bad intention, or that you are doing something accidentally that goes against the chanting, so to say, but without bad intention. So again, there are different definitions about that. It's not just black and white. But in connection to your question, we have the last, it's related to the last offenses, right? The ninth offense is first to preach the glories to those who are faithless, which I think it's clear. I mean, you don't try to, if someone is not willing to listen to the name of Krishna, or to his glories, you won't just jump on their neck and try to convert them and convince them and impose your own dogma, so to say. That's not loving not only to that person, but that's not setting a good precedent of the holy name for that person. The person says, oh, if a chanter of the holy name is behaving that fanatically, thank you so much for that. But no, that's not my cup of tea. But then comes what you mentioned, which is more related to, okay, if one heard the glories of the name, but somehow one continues living a materialistic lifestyle, hammameti, basically, that's considered aparadha. So, of course, then we will say, okay, we are all welcome to the club, no? Welcome to the universal fraternity. We are all there. Who is free from that? Because, I mean, it's not so easy to be free from this sense of ahamameti. So that's the actual Sanskrit translation of that part. It says Shruti Pi Nama Mahatmya, which means Api, Shruti Api, even after Shruti, hearing Nama Mahatmya, the glories of the name, Ya Priti Rahito Nara. No? One person is devoid of love. Okay, that happens. Aham Mamadi Paramo. So Aham Mamadi means this idea of I'm in mind. Like I continue conducting myself with this type of orientation. Whatever belongs to me is my own thing. I'm orient my own sense of being in terms of what I think I have and all that stuff. Namni so api aparadha krit. So that will be an offense. So, but it says aham mamadi paramo. Paramo means supreme. So basically means if you listen about the glories of the name, and of course it doesn't mean just listen casually. You went to a class and you listen to that and you continue your life and like nothing, then you are an aparadha. It means you listen, you contemplate the teachings, you accept them in your heart. No? Shravana, Bharana, and Sadhana. Shravana means you hear, Bharana means you accept, Sadhana means you practice. So the spirit, I will say, of this line is Aham Mamadi Paramo. Paramo means supreme. So even after hearing the glories of the name, you continue to consider as supreme a lifestyle-oriented aham mameti. I'm in mine. No, all it is me and all that I can get. That goes against love. And you continue chanting while fueling a lifestyle based on egocentricity. That's like counterintuitive to love. Let's use that word. That doesn't make sense. It's if I tell you I love you and I would like to love you and give myself to you, but I continue to foster a sense of separateness and egocentricity, it's like, doesn't make sense. So I will say that's the main spirit of that line. It's not so much like until and unless you are absolutely free from all tinge of false ego, you are an offender. No, I wouldn't make that in that level of application, because again, it's weaponizing Nama-aparadha and making everyone discouraged and nobody's doing anything good because still you are there, still you are doing offense after offense. It's more about like betraying myself. Like I hear certain instructions, I have an experience of the glories of the name, and then I continue living as if that's not true, as if that doesn't exist. Well, I know it's true. So I'm betraying myself. I've been hypocrite, basically. I'm cheating myself. So that's mostly the spirit of this line is don't cheat yourself. No, if I will have to boil down the whole section to a one-liner, it will be don't cheat yourself, right? So yeah, that's how I will explain it. Like from a place of begging, like please don't cheat yourself. No, you know Krishna's unconditional love. You know the glories of the name. You have had an experience of that. Don't live as if that doesn't exist. No, don't cheat yourself. No. So, and even again, even if our lifestyle is not fully aligned with the ideal yet, but we have an experience that touches our heart, and we are doing our best, even if we are still half-baked bhakta project. That's not offensive. Again, that's sincerity, and sincerity is invincible, Srila Siddharamaharaj will say. And Krishna's unconditional love, which is not different from the name, will be bestowed upon us. So yeah, I will try to emphasize that particular focus. There are a few comments here. I hope that helps. Okay, they are going. Okay.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. That's very, very clarifying. Really
Does it
appreciate
help?
that.
Okay.
Yes, a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So I think we are ready. although I have still this question from Namrasa. I'll go to Namrasa's question. I may briefly reply, and we may extend today a little bit more than usual, just a few minutes. I'll share the question also in the chat for those who would like to read it, but I will read it myself, of course. He says he was not able to connect, so he asked me to present it. Say, how do we strike a balance between approaching Krishna directly versus going through his servants? We understand that Krishna can be more easily approached with a recommendation from his nearest servants. He gives example of Srimati Radharani. Yet in language, we always hear try to approach Krishna or love Krishna, ask Krishna, seek Krishna, etc. In the regular world, when we want to approach someone who is famous, rich, or equally opulent in some way, we try to connect with someone who knows that person well. Does the same apply in spiritual life? Okay, thank you. So again, we are at the end of the conversation. I may not be able to go into all the details. It may be necessary to go. I have found throughout the years different, of course, I'm not denying the emphasis on sadhu sangha and guru and connection with the department of love to approach God. Our goal in life is love for God, right? Our goal in life is not God, it's love for God. Now, we don't want God without love, right? We want to love God. So that's why sometimes the emphasis is played on sadhu sangha, Vaishnav, Seva, Guru, Nishta, whatever the term, in the sense that those personalities ideally embody our goal of life. Our goal of life is love of God, and in some people will find that incarnated, if you want to use an expression, embodied. So in that sense, it's this emphasis on approach them first. That said, of course, I've I've heard various Vaishnavas, and I've seen, I mean, there's diversity, there's unity and diversity. So I know many Vaishnavas who in their practice, prayer, life of service, some of them are more inclined to emphasize Guru, Sadhu, Vaishnav, Seva, and others are more inclined to emphasize Krishna, approaching Radha and Krishna Mahaprabhu directly without canceling the other thing. No, I'm not saying one is canceling the other. It's just there are different degrees of emphasis. No, and in their preaching, in their practice, in how they share, some of them will be expressing themselves more in terms of a personal connection with God. Some others will be emphasizing more connection with sadhus. And again, there is place for all that. There's not that, okay, what's the correct way? What's the only way? There are different ways. And one is doesn't canceling the other, of course. Now, if I go to the sadhu, sadhu will connect me with Krishna. If I go to Krishna, Krishna will connect me with the sadhu, right? Because, I mean, they are in one sense inseparable. Now, one loves each other. One is in full love with each other. Sadhavo hridayam mahyam, sadhunam hridayam tuham, Krishna says in the Bhagavatam. No, my sadhus are my heart, and I'm the heart of my sadhus. So whenever you go to one or the other, you are getting the heart of the other. No? Someone is riding on a motorbike here, which is a little disturbing for the landscape we are in. But anyhow, some interesting dynamics. So I will say that no, it's not black and white. It's not just sadhu, 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 or Krishna, 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 but the two of them are connected with each other. She's training or something here. It's coming back and forth. And regarding the example, okay, in the regular world, we want to approach someone important. You need to go through someone who knows him. And I know Prabhupada gave that example to make this point. But also I will be careful not to, not to think, okay, the regular world is one thing, Krishna is another thing, in the sense of Krishna is omnipresent and his grace is accessible at every moment in every atom. No, so that's not the regular world. That's something beyond that, transregular. And that may create this idea of Krishna is not fully accessible in the here and now. And again, by saying this, I'm not discarding sadhu, sangha, or guru. I'm just saying Krishna is accessible. Krishna is fully present. His unconditional love is fully present, like we quoted the other day. Sanatan Goswami in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, he will say, if you approach a blade of grass for what it actually is, you can attain all perfection. So yeah, he's not saying there are Guru Parampara, Sadhu, Vaishnava. Of course, he's saying that in so many other sections. So the point is also you approach a Vaishnava, a Sadhu, and the Sadhu will tell you, if you approach a blade of grass for what it is, you will attain all perfection. You follow my point, no? That, okay, we have to go to the Sadhu. Let's go to Sanatana Goswami. And where is Sanatana Goswami sending us? To a blade of grass. No, let's go to the greatest form of divinity, Mahaprabhu. Let's say what he says. We go to him, he says Trinada Pisuniche, and he's sending us back again to a blade of grass. So just to give nuance to the whole thing, right? Implying, yeah, in potential, not only in potential, everyone is a devotee. In potential, Krishna is everywhere. Again, as Prahlad saw the pillar and he saw God. So, of course, depending the stage we are in, we will need more instruction or less. So I'm just speaking more theoretically. If I'm just beginning, probably won't be the best thing. Like, just go and see the grass and become self-realized. Probably people won't have the, won't be internally equipped to be able to draw as much benefit from a blade of grass in the beginning. They may need to hear from a particular person over and over again for a long time till they can go to a blade of grass and see it for what it is. So again, it depends on our stage. It depends on where we are. In the beginning, for us, God may be an abstract reality. We may not be able to experience his presence. In some cases, depending each case, and as once one devotee said, it may be easier to deny God's existence because I may not be able to see him or touch him. But when you see love of God personified in a particular person, that's more difficult to deny. No, when you feel someone who is filled with God, love of God to the brim, and you can really perceive that by his, her life and examples and teachings, that what it transmits to you. So that love of God, of course, is confirming God's existence. So we may need to connect with that love of God first, and not only first. Again, love of God is the goal of life. So it's from the beginning to the end. Love of God is important from the beginning to the end. Sadhu Sangha is important. That's what Krishna-das Kaviraj Goswami says in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna-bhakti janma mulha sadhu sangha, Krishna prem janmeteho punarmukhyanga. Sadhu Sangha is the beginning of bhakti, which is, of course, the whole topic of my first book. Bhakti comes from Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha is the beginning of bhakti. But Sadhu Sangha, when you attain Prema Bhakti, the goal of life, Sadhu Sangha is the most important anga of bhakti, in Prem. When you attain divine love, the main expression of divine love is Sadhu Sangha. It's how you share your heart with those who also have that type of love. So in one sense, from the beginning to the end, this principle of Sadhu Sangha is essential. But at the same time, that doesn't diminish a personal connection with God. I will say, actually, we need to become more and more accustomed to integrate the two, and not to think in binary black and white terms. So it is Krishna or it is about the sadhus. It is about both. One takes you to the other. One is inseparable from the other. Now, they are different in their own way. They are loving each other, but at the same time, one will connect you with the other. In the beginning, one thing may be better, but again, every case is different. Some person, I know, for example, one person that I remember talking to her, and she never met a Vaishnava first, at any point, but she started to hear at one point the name Krishna internally. Krishna, 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 without sadhu sangha in one sense. So again, that may be a more extraordinary situation. And of course, then she got sadhu sangha. So again, one thing takes to the other. No, Krishna took her to sadhu sadhu, and sadhu sadhu takes you further to Krishna, and so on and so forth. No, so I want also to leave the door open to different ways in which grace will knock on our doors. Right? There's not one single way. We have to be very careful not to make a packaging and okay, grace can only be expressed in this way and can only come in this sequence. It may be a general way that is recommended and usual, but at the end of the day, yeah, each case is unique. It's radically personal. So some thoughts dear Namrasaji, whenever you connect, you will see. Let me know your thoughts. So that's it. We are almost 2 hours now. So I'd like to thank you, all of you, for your presence, for your connection. And we will see each other in our next meeting. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Prabhu ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Praman Hari Bol, Vancha Kalpataru Vischa Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha, Titanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Hari Bol.